second.
Suck it in.
Yes.
You don't have to worry about
Okay. Get the blood pumping. That's awesome. Hey guys, Corey here from Sky's the Limit Car Care, and today we have a very special guest and a great friend of mine, Brian Guy from COLOURLOCK. So I'm going to go over these products really quick, just a really high-level summary and very brief, and then we're going to get into the actual details of them. I'm going to turn it over to Brian. He's going to talk to you a little bit about leather and just really educate you on the whole situation, and then we're going to get into some details here. So what I'm showing here is all the products that we're carrying now at Sky's the Limit Car Care from COLOURLOCK out of Germany. And we also have some of these products in other, or actually most of these products in other sizes. So these come in liter as well. This pen also comes in a 250 ml bottle, et cetera, et cetera. But we just showed this here for simplicity. So first I'm going to go over cleaning because that's the most important part of leather care, obviously. We were just talking about this earlier. First item, we have this handle right here along with the COLOURLOCK leather brush. So this is if you can use this on its own, but if you really are going to be doing a lot of work, then you can just pop that in and that won't let go. It's actually very firm and you can do the hard work without getting the hand fatigue. To pop this back out, just kind of watch your knuckles and it pops right back out. So next up we have the COLOURLOCK mild leather cleaner. This is what everybody should have for their leather. Like this is the most important product you can have. This is what you're usually going to clean your leather with. The next one is the COLOURLOCK strong leather cleaner. We'll get more into that later. The GLD, which we've affectionately nicknamed now Good Luck Dude, thanks to Mark Pierce from Remarkable Detailing.
Thank you, Mark.
And next is Leather Shield, and then right next to that we have Leather Protector. So these are the next two most important products. This product, just a real quick caveat, is not something most people should even be purchasing ever, but we'll get into that later. So Leather Shield, this is going to protect against abrasion after we clean the leather, in some cases with this, in most cases with this, then we need to protect it, and this is going to protect it against abrasion and those types of things. And then secondly, this does not have a lot of UV protection, so we're going to come back and top it with the Leather Protector. We have detailed instructions on how to layer that if you do want to layer it, or if you just need UV protection, then this is the item you would go with. And then next we have some products for softening the leather. For really old, dried out leather, we have the Elephant Leather Preserver. There's a really cool story behind the whole name that Lars went over with us when we did the COLOURLOCK training here. This is a great product. And then the Old Leather Softener, which Brian will get into some more details with that. And then finally, the COLOURLOCK coatings. So we have the Top Life DIY kit. This is the one that anybody can apply with a little bit of instruction from us. And then this is the professional version, which requires an airbrush. It has a two-part system, a hardener. It costs a little bit more than this one. And this one you should have more experience and know what you're doing before you get into. So I guess that was the really fast kind of introduction to all the products.
Yeah,
thank you.
No, very, very good.
Thank you very much.
Corey, thank you for having us. Obviously, we're excited to be here and at this stage with Sky's the Limit. It's really great. Thank you. And that was a perfect description of everything.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So with COLOURLOCK, we obviously want to know what leather is. So leather is a cowhide, you know. It went through a tannin process, and this process didn't take a couple hours. So when we're repairing leather, we have to also keep in mind that when we're trying to repeat what the tannery did. So if the tannery took a couple, say 2-3 days to produce an automotive leather, we have to not expect instant results because it didn't take instant results as they made it. So we are trying to recondition a dead animal skin. So with leather, it's gone through a tannin process, and basically what they're doing is that they're raising the pH really high, opens the pores of the leather, hairs fall out, and then they're going to bring it back down. And when we bring it back down, we're back to a stable point. Leather loves to be around 4 to 4.5 on the pH, which is exactly where the mild leather cleaner sets. So we're right here around 4 to 4.5 on the pH, which this alone is acting as a fantastic reconditioner through the cleaning process. So on the surface, the leather is really going to like this. We use foaming capsules so that we keep the moisture content low. It's not oversaturating or over moisturizing the surface of the leather, so it's reducing the amount of moisture penetration, but it is also effectively working to get this pH back to where it wants to be. Over time, when leather dries, it's because it's been removed of this moisture content because water and heat and everything else that cars are subjected to the elements. So it has a loss of it, and it's being sucked out through time. So water has a pH of around 7. Our body sweat has a pH of around 8, 9 plus. So every little bit of moisture content that comes in contact with leather is effectively altering that 4 to 4.5 comfort zone that leather is most comfortable in. So before we get into our leather cleaning, we also need to decipher when we're working in a car, is it leather, is it vinyl, is it perforated, is it, so really dive into the understanding of knowing what your material is. We have a couple different types of leather choices here in front of us. Most of these, we're not going to see in a car, but if we take like a pigmented leather and a vinyl, this is what we're going to find into a car a lot of the time. So we need to decipher. They both look, texture-wise, they look the same, but one is vinyl and one is leather. So really identifying your material is the step one. So if we're thinking, hey, I'm going to recondition a piece of leather, and then we come to find out it's vinyl, it plays a completely different role. So, but basically, the strong leather cleaner has a mild increase of 4%. And this is where the difference is. This is going to help us to be able to remove a little bit of extra dye transfer. If there's a mild dye transfer or something like this, it's going to be a little bit more effective if you want to work efficiently and faster. But overall, if we can stay here, this is the best place to be. But this is really going to work well for leathers that have been overly subjected to too much body sweats, too much oils, too much conditioners and everything else that we come in contact with leather with. So this is really going to help to remove and really get some of that stuff out of the leather. As Corey mentioned with the protections, the leather shield is an abrasion product. I would recommend to apply it every 4 months to stay really on top of your car. Mostly your bolsters, I call them your high traffic and your high friction zone. So your elbow rest, your steering wheel, your shift knobs, your bolsters, anywhere if you have kids in the car and you're getting a lot of abrasion, this is going to reduce dye transfer. It's going to reduce the abrasion wear, and it's ultimately going to save a lot of stress to the leather through that wear and tear factor. So this is a perfect thing for new cars and old cars, of course, but it's going to reduce it. And again, I want to recommend to apply it every 4 months to stay best. If you're doing it every 2 times a year, that's perfect also. Areas on the car like the back of the headrest or areas that don't see this abrasion, maybe you have a convertible or something like that, you're really going to be more keen to add in UV protection. Dashboards and things like this, leather dashboards. UV protection is absolutely going to cause it's absolutely going to reduce the amount of luster that's being withdrawn from the leather, because the sun is damaging it and it's pulling the luster and knocking the color shade down a little bit. So UV protection is a requirement as well. So it's not like I can go a one size fits all for my whole car, and again, it's not a one size fit all for the whole car, but both of them have their place in the car, and with if we really need to restore the moisture content, and because we have maybe I came in from the beach or I got rained on and I sat in my seat too long and this water has caused a major ripple effect as a wave is causing it to be hard, dry, and we don't want the surface paint to crack. So that's where extra conditioning is going to take into play. Oftentimes we see a lot of people apply conditioner, wipe it on, wipe it off. That's not necessarily the idea here. We want to really allow the elephant fat to be able to, and the old leather softener to penetrate into the leather. This is what is allowing it to do its job and locking back its binding state, you know. So if I took oil and water, they don't mix very well. They naturally separate. Through a tannin process, there's a binding agent, a chrome, vegetable tan, chrome free. These are binding agents that are allowing leather to become stable, malleable, and give them the nice luxury feel that we're all aware of. So in order for us to restore that, the old leather softener has the 4 to 4.5 pH, but it's a very thin viscosity. It's a lightweight liquid, so it's going to really get into the into the leather and deep into the pores very, very well. So it's going to help it. You might have to do 2-3 applications over time, depending on how hard the leather is. And same with the elephant fat. But when we apply the elephant fat, I want to apply it kind of like I'm applying a coat of wax, and let it set, let it do its job. In myself, I would usually let it set overnight, and when I would come back the next morning, what I would see is that the areas of the leather that really wanted it and said, yes, I'll take that, it'll take it. The areas where they say, no, I am okay and I don't really need this so much, it'll be up on the surface, which, you know, if with us with coatings, we would refer to as a high spot. You'll see it. Simply, next day, wipe it all down with a nice clean dry cloth, and our leather's good to go. So,
can I touch base on this product? A couple interesting things about the story behind that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and correct me because I have awful memory, as you guys know. But so, elephant leather preserver. Brian referred to that as elephant fat a minute ago. This has no part of an elephant in it, obviously. It's the actual name behind it, Lars explained it to us at the last COLOURLOCK training that we're doing. We're actually going to have another COLOURLOCK training coming up soon, but we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. But at the last COLOURLOCK training, Lars explained, I asked him, like, why is it called elephant fat or elephant leather preserver? And as I recall, what was the original name that it was supposed to be?
It wanted to be kiwi.
Kiwi, right, because the founder, one of the original founders was in New Zealand, and so everything there is kiwi, so he was going to call it kiwi polish. Kiwi polish, I think?
Kiwi,
or kiwi something, yeah.
Kiwi.
And so after he started looking into that, apparently, obviously there's already a shoe polish called kiwi. So, so he couldn't do that, and so I think he had a roommate or a good friend of his that was from India, and that gentleman told him, "Oh, the elephant is really lucky. Like this is, you got to call it this, you know." Like, and so that's the whole. That's why it came up. Their very first product was called elephant leather preserver. So
correct.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, and then also too, this being the first COLOURLOCK product, a museum had reached out to the original owner in the beginning because they had a piece of leather that was oxidizing, and basically inside the museum they didn't have a climate control box around this piece of material, so they needed something that was going to again pull that pH back down to where it wants to be,
and keep that ratio between the water, the fat, and the chromium.
Correct.
Is it those three items?
Yeah, depending on what the binding agent is through the tannin process, but there's always a binding agent. So like with cars, we're going to hear the words chrome and chrome free, you know, and vegetable tan is also the other common one. So vegetable tan is the binding agent is basically tree barks and natural substances like this, which is a very natural, old traditional form of leather tannin. In today's world with modern leathers, they're using chrome and chrome free, and this is the binding agent to help connect water and oil, if that makes sense. So if we were to spray leather with water and clean it, we'll get a result, but we break that bind slightly. The interesting thing is with leather is that we have the ability to reconnect that bind and bring it back. So ultimately, the COLOURLOCK line is we are very kind to leather and we want to repeat what the tannery did. So if we understand how leather was made, we have to repeat how it was produced in the same process. So certain things that are going to help to restore pH and things like that. But the elephant fat had a successful outcome on the material at the museum, and this is also why it has the word museum in here as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you explained this to me previously, but one of my first questions is like, when would I use this versus this? I do recall you telling me that this works faster in situations, but I know there's some cases where where one, I mean, other than preference, when would you use? They both kind of serve the same purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. If I had a leather that was extremely hard and extremely brittle, I'm going to go straight to old leather softener. If I have a leather that's say 10 years old, 12 years old in my Mercedes or something like this, and I feel that it's still malleable to a degree, but it's not, it's not hard and it's not to that brittle point yet. Then I can just get by with conditioning with some of the elephant fat, and that's gonna be a great maintenance product as opposed to the elephant fat will also work as a mild form of waterproofer at the same time. But it's more core-aligned to maintenance versus something that we're looking for a result, So we're not necessarily going to use old leather softener in a process that we're using this because we need a solution to have an extremely, extremely dry leather. And the elephant fat is going to be more along the lines of maintenance. So whether I chose to use this product or one of these three products on my maintenance protection side, all three serve a great purpose.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And then I think you explained already well, like when you would use this versus this. And when you would use this versus this. That was super helpful, so I really appreciate that and all of the explanation of leather and why we care for it and how important it is. One more question on this, or actually let me back up a minute and kind of do some discussion on some things that I learned from the COLOURLOCK training that I think that are like kind of these, you're either in group A or group B of how you should care for leather and kind of some of the stories that we've been told over the years and kind of the camp that you fall into on as far as what you believe. So when you guys came down here, I went into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to learn this, this, and this, but there were certain things that I've been doing this, over a decade, and I'm supposed to know, I thought I knew everything there was to know, or at least plenty more than most people with regards to finished leather and most leathers that you would commonly see. And I thought, oh, this stuff will be great for some of the leathers we don't always see. But I thought I had it all figured out with finished leather. And when you and Lars started to educate me during that training, it really kind of blew my mind. And so I wanted to kind of go over that for our viewers that have heard me say something different than what we're saying here a little bit over the course of the last 10 to 12 years. And so for years, some of you that maybe even watch our YouTube have probably called at some point and said, hey, do I need such and such? Do I need this leather conditioner? Or, what do I need for my leather? And what I've always said in the past, and I had this conversation with you and Lars too, is I've always said, well, it's finished leather. There's a layer of PVC or whatever they have as that finished layer on top of the leather. You cannot reach the leather with a conditioner. So it's all pointless. For sure, we have leather conditioners. If you want to buy them, you're welcome to it. That's why we have them there, because some people demand to be able to buy that leather conditioner. But in my opinion, it's pretty much pointless on finished leather, and you can just do this or this. And that's what I've said for 12 years, and that's what I believe to be true. So when you guys explained to me and we started going over this, and we were, 4 or 8 hours into the class, and that's when I asked you guys, I was like, well, this is what I've been telling people for 12 years. Am I wrong? My mind is blown here. Because obviously there's finished leather, and then there's, you have a variety of different levels of finish where it will penetrate easier or less.
Yeah, you're correct.
And so I think I asked Lars, or maybe it was you, and I said, well...
Especially with cars.
Yes, yes, especially with cars. So I was like, well, have I been telling everybody wrong? What is this? With finished leather, I thought, I was so sure, if I put a drop of water on finished leather, it doesn't soak in. So how are these getting into that leather? How is this getting into that leather? And obviously I understand that with heat and cold comes expansion and contraction, and so with heat you could more easily maybe get something to get in there, to penetrate. But still, my point being, with finished leather, do we really need this? And Lars explained to me, he's like, well, you're not completely wrong. For sure, with finished leather, it's very difficult to get these things down into the leather, but it's not impossible. I think he said a 2 or a 6% is 2 or 6% penetration rate, whereas it's 98% or 95%, 92%, somewhere around there, going to stop anything from penetrating into it. But over time and with heat, some things are still doing that. So just to kind of back up and explain everything that Brian just went over with leather, when it comes to finished leather, those products are going to penetrate a lot more slower than the other items, or than the other types of leather. And so I'll hand it back to you, and you can correct anything.
Yeah, absolutely. This piece of leather came out of a McLaren, for example. So it's an automotive finished leather, typical to what we're seeing in a car. Basically, the polyurethane top coat on top of it, and the way that they produce this leather has made it extremely durable. I can scratch it. I'm not leaving fingernail scratches on it. So, to the point, it is very difficult to get something to soak through. Almost impossible to go to the backside. So this is a very true statement. However, it's still organic. It's still, most all the leather that is coming into a vehicle is coming from the meat industry. So we are using leather, and it is I refer to it as a dead cow. So,
and what you're saying by that, coming from the meat industry, what you're saying is this leather is coming from the same cows that were already used for meat, and so this is either going to waste, or we can make use of it and make the cow's life worth something.
Correct. I say don't kill the cow twice. So at some point in a cow's second life, it will need the nutrition. We can't expect a piece of dead skin to last forever. We could have a beautiful car, stick it in a museum, metal, composite material, everything like this. It'll stay stable through time. Stick the car in a bubble. Leather will always age. So at some point in a leather's life, this conditioning process does come into play. So it's not a matter of how, or it's a matter of when. So when is the leather going to be due for it? So myself, I used to love playing baseball. I have baseball gloves from a kid, and if you don't play with them for 15, 20 years, the glove is going to become hard, right? So much like any leather accessories you might think that you have at your own area or in your family, the cool and the sustainable thing about leather, and why it's even still being used, is because it's sustainable, it's fixable, and it's built to last. So, but we have to be able to understand it enough to be able to nurture it back into its health. So this is where automotive leathers, we have to just kind of take into consideration our level of care, which is, again, just not too much moisture, using things that are at a proper pH balance. We have a lot of people that use steam and things like this. Maybe you're rolling over steam in a car and you're hitting pieces that are vinyl and leather. You're coming up with results, guaranteed. You can take anything to clean leather, but if we understand that it is a piece of organic material and that it has life in it, that we have to understand that it's going to require a certain level of care. It's one of the only parts of the car that is organic. So yeah, it's very important that we care for it.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the way you think about leather and all of the knowledge that you're bringing to the industry. I think it's really important. Going back to one thing before we hop on to anything else, but what you mentioned about finished leather being slower to age, but still it's going to age. It's going to, everything you just said. One of the things that I wanted to highlight that you guys taught me was also that depends on how fast it ages and how fast it needs these nutrients. Depends on what it's been cleaned with in the past. So for instance, if we are using a highly alkaline or a more acidic,
household cleaner.
More often, usually it's the highly alkaline is going to be the issue with leather. It's not going to be, nobody's using acid in there.
Correct.
And it's already 4 is fine for it. So so if you're using simple green or something, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Even all-purpose cleaners that are pH 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, like these things that are often used in car care.
Correct, to produce results. And
yes.
They do.
They do. But what's happening on a microscopic level and getting down into there is aging that leather significantly and completely destroying the balance of the water and the fat that's deep down inside there.
The collagen fibers.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's when it comes into play.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, but just like Corey said too, this cow wasn't born black, so we get a lot of inquiries saying, hey, I have this kind of car, I have this kind of leather. It's more important to think that you have leather, You know, is it leather or is it vinyl? Is it synthetic leather? You know, really understand what it is. The color makes no difference at all because the cow was not born with this color. You know, it was painted on here. So through a tannin process, the leather went through a tannin process, became malleable, and this color black was put into it. It wasn't naturally this way. So, and this goes for any other, you know, pigmented leathers that we're going to see in a car, that the whatever color the surface is it's a paint, and then on top is usually a polyurethane top coat. Depending on how much of these two products are on the surface is also going to depend on how hard the surface is or how soft the surface is. So an automotive maker, if they want the leather to be more soft and more luxurious, they're going to reduce the amount. So therefore now we have to care for it a little bit more accurately, because the wear and tear factor happens at a much faster rate because we have less material to work with. The great part about it is that we always have the ability to reapply the material after, and again, repeating steps of the tannin process.
And when you say that, what you're getting into is actually the repair of the leather, like when you're actually repairing it, adding a piece of leather repair, dyeing it.
Correct.
And that we get a lot more in depth as in the COLOURLOCK training. We're going to have a link below to where you can sign up for our next COLOURLOCK training as well. And in those classes, Brian will get into that deep, and hopefully in a future video we can do some of that on one of our YouTube videos too, maybe after the next training class.
Yeah, absolutely. Because wear is a common thing in vehicles. You know, obviously, and you know, bolsters and steering wheels, anywhere where there's wear onto it, there's a very common factor for this. And you know, naturally we're kind of subjected to cleaning conditioning when we're talking about car care. You know, but we have to consider the amount of lost material. You know, if our auto detailers, you know, watching, if I'm polishing the clear and I'm removing top coat from the paint that I cannot replace, our body and our friction and our everything that we're causing as we're wearing on it, jeans. We are the pad, we are the abrasion, we are the pressure, we are the speed. All of the factors and variables that come into this, it's the same principle, but we are that abrasion factor on top of our leather surface. And by good care and good protection and reduced friction, you know, things like this is the best ways that we can kind of care for the leather so that we reduce the amount of wear and tear that's taken place to it. And again, in the training classes, if we go to this, then we can, you know, talk about the replacement of that material. So
awesome, thank you. So I'm going to touch a little deeper on just these three, or on this one, and then hear from you on them, and then we'll close it down and do some demo
Awesome.
and some playtime. So GLD, we offer this in two different sizes: the GLD pen and then a bottle of GLD. And we talked about this earlier. Mark from Remarkable Detailing said,
in the training class.
yeah, said in the training class.
Yeah.
So I asked Lars, I was like, hey, why is it called GLD? Because like that didn't, you know, is it GLD? Couldn't place it. So I said, what's GLD? And Mark just out of nowhere was like, good luck, dude. Yeah. And it's exactly a great name for it, because basically for most people, the only time they're going to use that is when it's already like, good luck, dude. Like it's already, you know, like it's already a problem. And good luck, dude, in that it can cause some damage if you don't use it carefully.
Correct.
You can easily cause damage. It's working by slightly melting the top surface of the leather.
Correct.
So if you don't do it real carefully or don't know what you're doing, you can melt too much and you can end up with a bigger problem than you started with.
Correct.
So
it's also opening the pores of the leather as well. So GLD is just like that first step of the tannin process where they expand it, and you know, it's a GLD solvent, and when it's opening up the pores of the leather, simultaneously it's melting the top surface very slightly. If we have heavy dye transfer, you can go with the GLD and the leather cleaner strong, and I guarantee you'll get a much better result.
To use them as a combination?
Yeah, to use them as a combination.
Interesting. So how do you do that? Like,
You would apply the GLD first.
Really?
Yeah, you would apply the GLD first, just lightly kind of put it on section at a time.
Would you avoid using it, if you had the pen, would you avoid using it with the pen for a color transfer type of situation, or would that apply too much product?
No, you can use the pen too.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Or if you had a bottle, then applying it with
Yeah,
microfiber.
if you have a bottle, you can
Okay.
apply it to the surface. If you're planning on doing the whole thing, if you have an isolated problem, this is fantastic.
Okay.
You know, but basically you're going to apply the GLD to the surface. It's going to let it sit there and work. It's staying working.
So the longer you leave it, the more aggressive it's going to be?
Correct. The longer you leave it there, the more it's doing its job. If we touch the surface, it will have a tacky feel to it. It's very important that if we want to neutralize that effect and stop it, that the leather cleaner is strong. And if I'm working and if I feel like it's too much, I can put it right on my hand, wipe it on there, I neutralize and I stop the effect.
Cool it down quick.
Yeah,
okay.
It's completely neutralizing the effect of GLD. But if we're going to go to remove really heavy dye transfer, we will take some GLD, apply it, take the leather cleaner strong, clean with a brush, and again we're getting a far deeper penetration cleaning. This is the most heaviest cleaning process that you're going to find. You're not going to be able to penetrate anything further. Anything after that is going to fall into the realm of repair. So, but when it comes to cleaner, if that makes sense, and then GLD with leather cleaner strong this is your deepest form of clean that you're going to possibly get
Before you start sanding
before you start sanding and
repairing.
replacing material and things like that. So that's there's basically 4 steps if we consider the foam applicator. The foam applicators, if I take very good care of my car, I don't need such type of abrasion.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I was going to say that about the brush in the beginning. It's a very aggressive brush.
Correct,
so
correct.
For your typical cleaning, you don't need this.
Correct.
You're going to grab we have a, well, you could use the sponge.
Correct.
Or we have the microfiber madness and the scrubber, the little green and
Correct.
white thing. That thing works awesome for everything in the interior, and it's a lot safer. But then if you need more aggression, sorry.
And to Corey's point also with the brush, these cheap synthetic bristles, which we don't hide the fact, they're perfect. They're perfectly designed for car leather, and they were made to be this synthetic cheap bristle material, for example, at the stiffness that they are at, because it's always maintaining a matte surface. If I took a much softer brush and if I was to apply a lot of friction, I can create shine to the surface. So
that's a very interesting point.
This particular style synthetic brush is always maintaining matte surface, which is most typical with a lot of cars. So if I'm polishing shoes, I'm going to have like maybe some sandpaper on the level of coarseness, and then I have a more coarse brush, and I work my way up to a softer brush, and the more I do this, the shinier the shoe gets. Same principle, you know. So this is these synthetic bristles are safe. They're safe on all areas of the leather, perforated holes as well. But again, if I'm really on top of my leather care, I don't need such type of abrasion. Just a little bit of a leather cleaner and maybe a foam is more than sufficient. I don't really recommend to take a rag and wipe, because a lot of the times with that we're missing the texture, you know. So we need some form of a circular motion to kind of take place in order to, you know, penetrate some of the texture. Otherwise, we're just riding on the surface, and maybe the hills and valleys that
That's a great point.
Yeah,
it's so true.
Yeah, well, I see this a lot in
when you have
photos.
light colored leather with really dirty stuff, you start seeing all the dirty lines.
People send me photos, and I'm like, well, you got to clean it first. Well, I did. I cleaned it first. Well, clean it a little better.
I use my washcloth.
Because a lot of the times it's like this type of clean, and this is not penetrating into the cracks, the crevices, and the characteristics of the texture, for sure.
Yeah.
So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
I think we'll go ahead and go to these if you're okay with it. So final 2 products, if we want to go into a little more depth, that's the DIY top lift coating, and then there's the professional one if you want to explain anything about those 2.
Easy to apply. This is a step ahead. It's not a friction product like the Shield product, but it is a nice coating product. It's offering a 12-month coating, if that makes sense. I don't like to use this word coating, but it's a 12-month protection package.
And the great thing about both of these, if I can interrupt you, maybe you were already going to get into this, but compared to like ceramic coatings and compared to them being, go ahead.
It's non-solvent based. It's kind of the leather, so
it's not going to yellow the leather.
It's not going to yellow the leather because it's water based. Coatings don't like, or leathers don't like coatings because if the coating has a solvent in it, and a lot of the times this is why we're seeing or maybe heard about the yellowing. The Top Life Professional 2-part product, easy to apply. You need an air gun to apply. This has a cross-linker in it that needs to be added to the top coat. Basically, we're talking about 24 months and 48 months. So the amount of protection that's added, but there's no guarantee that leather is protected. Again, you know, the variables are going to vary between one to the next. So I think these are good options, but but leather is always going to be susceptible. And again, both products are water-based in order to be kind to the leather and for the leather to still breathe. So therefore, things can still occur. You know, if something did happen, they both make cleaning and maintenance a little bit easier. You know, but again, it's not a 100% guaranteed to shield, you know, and be this type of protection that something, you know, could not happen. So if I have somebody who's 400 pounds getting in and out of their car, they're going to wear on it a lot faster than the girl who's 110 pounds. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of variables that come into play. So when it comes down to the consumer purchasing, these are really great options. And if a consumer wants to take their car to a professional, or if a consumer wants to do it themselves, they're really great options. Just understand that leather has a large variable itself, much more larger than cars, in my opinion. You know, if I apply a coat into a car, I can kind of guarantee some things, but leather has 10 times more variables, in my opinion, and it's going to depend on where it was at, how did it get there, who's in it, and who's caring for it, and everything else, where this car is at based on climate-wise.
And by that, with regards to the leather, you're, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of what I was getting from what you're saying is we've got clear coat on, and for sure clear coat varies. Correct. For sure we do have variance in clear coat, but what you're saying is the variance in the top coat of the leather is much wider than the variance in the clear coat. There's some pretty established guidelines with regards to how they make clear coat right now.
Correct.
And this can change from year to year.
Like
we have no idea what Volvo's going to put in.
Put
in their leather
100%.
next year. Like
100%.
No telling.
Myself working in a lot of automotive areas, vehicle manufacturers are going to continue to use leather. And they're also going to continue to manipulate what they can do for a top surface. So one of the things I like to say in our training classes is if we think about where the car has come in 100 years, you know, and we had wooden steering wheels and steel steering wheels, then they wrap it with an aniline leather. It didn't do well with leather. We go fast forward to 60s, 70s cars. We think about those and what type of feel this has to it, how it was susceptible to scratches. We fast forward to today's modern leathers, and now we have, so when we think about it, you know, just like the exteriors of the cars, the interiors of the cars are still in a learning state as well, and we're still very young into understanding what's the potentials of what could possibly be done in the future. You know, so as time goes on, to Corey's point, this is forever going to be changing. I think that, you know, I'm seeing also a lot of car manufacturers are very keen to using leather right now. I think it's a very supportive thing that they're doing in order for a lot of these leathers to not go to waste. So the more leather that gets introduced into cars, I think it's great. This way we keep, you know, some X amount of dead skins out of the dump, because effectively we as a globe, we're not able to use as much leather as we're eating, if that makes sense. So we have a surplus of leather that is not being used. So more automotive manufacturers using it is actually a really great thing.
That's awesome. I love that. I can't think of a better place to stop it. There's so much more we could talk about, but I know you guys don't like too long of a video, and so we're going to go ahead and stop it there, and we're going to do a little playtime with some of the products and Brian's favorite part, and then we're going to bring Brian back for another video in the future as well. I can't thank you enough for doing this, for coming out here. You know, I love you.
Of course.
You're like a brother. You're a good friend of mine, and I can't be more appreciative of everything you've done for the industry. And so thank you for once again bringing leather care to the forefront,
No,
and,
thank you, Corey.
and doing everything that you do.
Very excited to be here with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to do so. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the bottom, and Brian or I will get back to you with anything that we didn't go over here. There's links to the products as well below. And as always, I hope you loved the video. We're super grateful for you watching, and talk to you next time.